equation of state, and we are solving for volume, right? So this is a non-linear equation, which for our instrumentation student, it is sufficient to know that it is simply alpha times v cube plus beta times v squared plus gamma times v plus delta equals 0, where alpha, beta, gamma and delta are functions of temperature, pressure, van der Waals constant A and van der Waals constant B. Okay, so there will be some value. And what you need to do is you need to solve for this cubic equation, and that will give you your volume. Now my question is that if you use any iterative technique, like just say Newton-Raphson technique to solve for volume, what you will do, you will initialize the value of volume. You will have a guess volume, right? So you say that V equals 5, just as an initial guess. Then you start your iteration I equals 1. Then you have your complete Newton-Raphson algorithm. You determine V of I from here. I equals I plus 1. You determine Vi plus 1. You define something called tolerance, right? Which is equal to Vi plus 1 minus Vi. And if tolerance is less than some value, say 0.001 or whatever, you just print volume. Print V, it can be I, it can be I plus 1, does not matter. Otherwise, if it is no, then you again go here and repeat the entire procedure till the tolerance becomes less than your value. Now, the question which I want to ask you is that can you take V equals 0 as the initial guess? So what is the answer? Anybody? Is it possible to solve this problem or any of such problems by taking 0 as the initial guess? Any
No,
any
sir,
thoughts?
because I think the derivative will become undefeated.
No, that the
No.
question of derivative is specific to Newton-Raphson method. I'm not concerned about that. That issue will come here in the Newton-Raphson algorithm. And 0 initial guess doesn't mean that the derivative is 0. But in general, you never take this. So the answer is that no, you cannot take this. So answer is no, right? You do not do this. Why don't you take the initial value as 0? What is the problem that you encounter when you take initial value as 0?
Sir, gas volume can't be zero.
Sorry, why?
Or
That's
any,
the that's the question. Why can you not take the gas volume as 0? Because the gas volume, the volume of the gas is non-zero. No, that doesn't matter, because as long as you are not reaching the correct volume, it does not matter what is the initial guess you are taking. And for this problem, again, you are being specific to this particular gas. It can be any equation. So when I'm solving any equation, why can I not take the guess value as 0? What is the reason? Okay, so let me tell you the reason. Okay, the reason why you don't take this is because when you start with 0, Vi equals 0, and when you substitute and go through all these algorithms, you will find it's very likely that Vi plus 1 will be 0, which means you will find that Vi plus 2 is also 0, which means Vi plus 3 also is 0, and so on. And that happens when you start with 0. You start with any non-zero value, 0.01 also, your system will evolve. right? So now the question is, why does it so happen that you have Vi which is equal to 0? It fails your entire computational method. The answer to this question is exactly what we are studying all of these days, because 0 is an equilibrium solution to many dynamical systems. Okay, so now every code which you make, is a dynamical system. Where is the time? See, this is the time. This is the fictitious time in your case, because your system is evolving with respect to I. So you have some value of V here, V0, then you go to V1, then you go to V2 and so on. So this I is acting as your time. Now what happens at equilibrium? Once you reach equilibrium, so when you are evolving any of your function f of t and you reach equilibrium, when you reach equilibrium, anything after reaching the equilibrium remains constant, right? So when you start here as 0, you will always be at 0. You will never be able to solve the problem. So every code which you make, which makes use of this tolerance, this is important. The code which you make, which makes use of the condition of tolerance, is basically a dynamical system. And you are trying to find out, the equilibrium solution which is non-zero. You're trying to find out non-zero equilibrium solution to this dynamical variable. And that non-zero equilibrium solution is the volume in this particular case, or any variable which you want to solve for that particular case. Now, you can as well have another equilibrium solution which is 0, but 0 is a trivial solution and therefore you are not interested in this. Okay, so now what we will do today is we will actually make use of this concept to understand the dynamics of the system. This exact same concept which we discussed now, we will be using to understand the dynamics of the kind of systems which we have been dealing with today. Okay, so the topic for today is dynamics dynamics.
Sir, I had a
Yes,
question regarding this. Sir,
yes.
sir, why is zero equilibrium? Because if I write that iteration algorithm equation, then it is
Hmm.
vi plus 1 minus vi equal to minus f by f prime.
Hmm.
Now, like if it has to be equilibrium, then it has to be a root of f. Or
No, see, that's what I have done. What goes on in the Newton-Raphson algorithm, and what is the exact functional form of your particular function, I have not paid attention to that. What I'm saying is that there are a large number of equations and algorithms which have 0 as their equilibrium solution. Okay, and whenever
okay,
0 is an equilibrium solution, your method will fail.
yes,
Okay.
sir.
Huh. Similarly, when you do coding, it is also not advisable to use 1 as the initial solution. Why? Because if the system is normalized, 0 is an equilibrium solution, 1 is also an equilibrium solution. So the moment you start with 1, you will keep on getting 1 in every iteration. You will never propagate. Okay, so 0 and 1 are the things you should avoid, and the physical reason behind avoiding these two, we use this as a rule of thumb. Okay, don't use 0, but what is the reason? The reason is because 0 is an equilibrium solution which you do not want. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So dynamics in discrete domain, discrete domain, and let us emphasize non-linear.
Sir, then for this particular case in van der Waals EOS, then
Yes.
0 can be an accepted initial guess, right? Because I think 0 won't be an equilibrium solution then.
Well, we will come to
Okay.
this question. We will come to this once we uh, draw a function here. Okay.
Okay.
So if I will remember your question and I will answer your question during that time. Okay.
Yes.
So let us focus on nonlinear dynamics in discrete domain. So our first and the simplest case of of a model was dx by dt equals ax, and this was linear model, and we said that this is applicable during initial stages of population growth. Okay. Now let's see. There is a fundamental flaw when you model the system using this. Why? Well, the answer to this is that the solution is x of t equals x of 0 e to the power at. Right? This is the evolution of the system. Now we know that t belongs to R. Right? Time is a real number, which means that x of t will also belong to R. Now you can be more realistic and you can say this as the positive R and this is as positive R. That's fine. But in any case, x of t, which is the population, looks like it's going to be a real number, which means that x can be 2.39 for an example. But can you have the population of any species which is equal to 2.39? Just as an example, the answer is no, because x will always be a natural number, right? It has to be a positive integer or 0, right? So now how can you model a system using a continuous variable, when you have a chance that your population can actually be a non-integer value, where in reality it does not happen? Well, the answer to that question is that I know that my population will be a function like this, where you have these as integers, but when you model this, you will get an answer which will be somewhere up and down. And when you say that you are modeling a population which is x of t, which is of the order of 10 to the power 5 or 10 to the power 6, so 10,005.6 is all good as 10,005. It doesn't make much difference, right? And that's why such continuous models work. Practically they work. But if I have to actually model the system and analyze the dynamics in discrete domain directly without using this continuous domain and then doing an approximation, how do I do that? Well, for doing that, let us try to understand what does dx by dt equals ax mean. Dx by dt equals ax mean. Dx by dt equals ax means two things. X is a function of time, right? X is going to vary with time. This is the first information that I get. So the second information that I get is that I know that time now is not a continuous variable. Time is discretized. Now you have time t equals t0, t1, t2, and so on, right? It's a discrete variable. So x of n plus 1, which means the value of the variable, of the dependent variable at time instant n plus 1 will be some function of the value at xn, right? It will be some function of value xn. We do not know what that function is, but these are the two physical results which we interpret from this model. So let's try to develop this and try to find out what g of xn is. So I can use, say, forward difference technique and say xn plus 1 minus xn upon delta t equals a of xn, right? From where I can simply write x of n plus 1 equals xn plus a delta t xn. In other words, x of n plus 1 is b of xn, where b is a delta t plus 1. Right? Now, this one is the continuous model, and this one is the discrete model, right? And then since you know that your xn at any instant of time is going to be uh, an integer, is going to be an integer, this entire thing, if it is an integer, then population at every point of time is going to be an integer. So you have everything in the discrete domain. Now you have two completely different models. One is dx by dt equals ax. Another is xn plus 1 equals bxn. So does not matter whether I solve this problem in discrete domain or continuous domain, the characteristic features of evolution of a system or evolution of the population, they remain the same, right? So the characteristics captured by this equation should be same as the characteristics captured by this equation, right? These two equations should capture the same characteristics. So now what are the characteristics which are captured by the first equation? Well, we know what are the characteristics which are captured by the first equation. So this is t, this is x. For a greater than 0, this is how the solutions would look like. For a less than 0, this is how the solutions would look like, right? So what does this mean? This means that if your value of growth parameter is positive, the population will tend to infinity, right? Now let's see if the same thing is captured by this model. I start with xn. So xn can be, or x0 in fact, is my initial value. So what will be x1? B times x1, and if b is greater than 0, this means that this value is greater than xn plus 1. So I will move on to the next step. So I was here and then I have moved on to the next step. Okay, since b is greater than 0, xn plus 1 will be greater than xn. Now next step, since b is greater than 0, xn plus 2 will be greater than xn plus 1, or x2 would be greater than x1. But you are multiplying it with the instantaneous value of xn. So therefore you will multiply. So the gradient which is here would be smaller than the gradient which is here. The gradient which is here. So the gradient would increase, and therefore as a result you will keep on moving towards the infinity. And similarly you can propose the exact converse, that with time, so this is for b greater than 0, for b less than 0, your population will keep on reducing, right? So the characteristics which the continuous model captured is exactly the characteristics which your discrete model also captured, right? So we now have some confidence on the discrete modeling. Now let us see our better model for the population dynamics was the logistic population growth model. So what was our logistic model? Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, there was an unexpected network problem. I don't know why. Let's see. So can you see the board?
No, sir.
Till now, sir.
Not yet.
Yes. No.
Now?
We are able to see, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we can continue. Okay, so so our first attempt was to convert the continuous dx by dt equals ax linear model to a discrete model, and our discrete model was xn plus 1 equals b times xn. So that was our discrete model, and what we try to analyze is that the characteristics which a continuous model gives us, are they applicable to discrete models as well? The answer was yes. Now let's see the logistic. So the logistic model was x by dt equals a x 1 minus x upon n, right? So you'll do the same exercise, x n plus 1 minus x n upon delta t equals a x n 1 minus x n upon capital N, and then you will do this do the rearrangement, and you will find, I'm leaving this rearrangement as an exercise, you will find that x n plus 1 will be equal to lambda times x n 1 minus x n upon mu, right? The functional form will be exactly like this. Now lambda will be in terms of a, delta t, and so on, capital N also in this case, and similarly mu would be also again some function of a, delta t, and capital N. Fine. So now our attention is how to know whether this model, discrete model, captures the same characteristics as is done by the continuous model. So let's see what were the characteristics of our continuous model for this particular case. Let's see, we make the axis, and if we remember everything correctly from the previous lecture, this is t, this is t, this is x, this is x. Our there would be two equilibrium solutions, right? So there would be two equilibrium solutions. One equilibrium solution was this. The other equilibrium solution was this, which is equal to n, or which is equal to 1 for the normalized case. And how did the solutions look like? For a greater than 0, the solutions looked like this: 1, 2, 3. And for a less than 0, the solutions look like this: 1, 2, 3. Everything is an asymptote, right? So now the characteristics of this continuous domain is that there exists two equilibrium solutions, right? And we should be in a position to capture this using continuous domain modeling as well, right? So let's see. Our continuous domain model is x n plus 1 equals lambda times x n 1 minus x n. We know that the effect of mu is just to change the equilibrium solution up and down, so we will not worry about that, right? So now this is an equation. This is an equation which, how does this equation work? You start with a seed. Okay, so you start with a seed, and that seed is going to be x0. In your coding, this is your initial guess or guess value. You substitute this seed in this equation, in the above equation, you get x1. Iteratively, you keep on doing this, you get x2, you get x3, and so on. And this is nothing but the evolution of the system in discrete domain. Okay, so in continuous domain, the evolutions look something like this. Okay, the face portrait is here. In discrete domain, you will have discrete values. So if your f of x, okay, so suppose your f of x looks something like this. So let's see what happens. Let me draw a function which looks something like this, right? Which looks something like this. Okay, so this is your x n. This can as well be your x n plus 1. So your seed is x0, which means you start from here, for example. Let's say you start from here. Okay, so this is your x0, right? This is your x0. So this is x0. And then what happens? The corresponding value. So here you have x, here you have xn. You have the value of x0, and when you are on the function, this gives you the value of xn plus 1, right? So the corresponding value of xn plus 1 is this, right? This is the corresponding value of xn plus 1. Now you see what happens. I will draw one line. And that line, I'm drawing this line, and what is this equation of this line? This is y equals x, or in this terms, xn plus 1 is equal to xn. I'm drawing this line, right? So now you start with x0. I started with x0 here. I got x1. Now for the next iteration, to get x2, x1 becomes my x0. Right? So therefore I will drop a line here. I will drop the line here, isn't it? And then what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that this is my x1, and this is going to be my x2. In the next step, what's going to happen? In this step, this becomes my x2, this becomes my x3, and I will keep on doing this. You see, this is what will happen, right? I'll keep on doing this. Now, the moment I reach this point, right? My xn plus 1, has become equal to xn, right? So what was the procedure? You drew the function, you drew y is equal to x line. You started with the function, went horizontally, then vertically, then horizontally, then vertically, then horizontally, then vertically, and so on. And you got this intersection of these 2 points, of these 2 curves. Intersection of xn plus 1 is f of xn, and xn plus 1 is equal to xn. And once this happens, xn is equal to xn plus 1, which means this will be equal to xn plus 2, which means this will be equal to xn plus 3, and so on. Which means I have reached the equilibrium solution. I have reached the equilibrium solution. And the equilibrium solution in discrete domain is called the fixed point. Okay, the equilibrium solution in discrete domain is called the fixed point, right? So how would you determine the fixed point? So in previous case, how did you determine the equilibrium solution? The equilibrium solution was determined by dx by dt equals f of x equals 0. This was the recipe for determining the equilibrium solution. In the discrete domain, what you will do, you will solve for f of x equals x. See, this is the function for f of x. This is the function for x, right? So f of x equal to x, and everywhere where you have intersection of f of x is equal to x, you have a fixed point or you have the equilibrium solution. So now this particular f of x equals to this function has two fixed points. Fixed point 1, fixed point 1, and this fixed point 2. Okay, so if you were modeling this problem in continuous domain, you would have gotten two equilibrium solutions. Now that you are modeling this equation in discrete domain, you are getting two fixed points. Now looking into this recipe, let us try to understand how our logistic equation works. So our logistic equation was x of n plus 1 equals a, lambda in fact, lambda times x of n 1 minus xn, right? So how would I solve or determine the fixed points? First of all, I must have two equilibrium solutions when this was a continuous model. So I should get two fixed points, right? So therefore, now you see I will solve for y equals x, solve for the intersection of y equal to x, and y equals lambda x 1 minus x, right? I will solve for these two. Let me try to do this. And see if I get all the fixed points correctly. So how does it look? I need to solve for f of x equals ax 1 minus x. No, ax 1 minus x, right? And then what I need to do is I need to look for g of x equals x, and the intersection of these two lines will give me the fixed points. Let us see. So let me zoom in and let's see what happens. You see, when you have a value of a, which is say in this case 1.9, you have two intersection points, right? So this is analogous to your continuous domain modeling where you have two equilibrium solutions, right? So when you model your system in discrete domain, you get some characteristic features which are very, very interesting. Okay, this you would not find, you may not find in continuous domain modeling. First, we were expecting that there are two fixed points corresponding to two equilibrium solutions, and in fact that is the case. One fixed point is here, the other fixed point is here. Okay, but then let us try to do one thing. So I'll make it from 0 to 4. Okay, I'll do this. And what first I see is that I have only one fixed point. So depending upon the value of lambda in your parameter, you either have one fixed point or you have two fixed points here. Okay, the minimum number of fixed points or the minimum number of equilibrium solutions that you can have is 1. The maximum number of equilibrium solutions that you can have is 2. Right? So let us try to find out if you can have a situation which is even more interesting. So let's see. I'll write h of x equals x squared plus c. Right? So c is a parameter. Why did it not plot it? It plotted it all right here. Plus, okay, let us make it now. Still didn't do it. X squared plus c, and the moment I put c, it goes away.
Sir, c equals to 1.4 is out of the domain, I think.
Okay, fine. Got it. Huh, yeah, it does. It was the problem of the range. Yeah. So you see, my function is good. Thank you. So my function is x squared plus c equals f of x. And now I have to see whether this function, this discrete model, which is modeled as x of n plus 1 is equal to x n squared plus a constant, can it ever have equilibrium solution? In this particular case, C, there is no equilibrium solution. Okay, then you can have exactly one equilibrium solution. It would be difficult for me to point out to exact that value, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to do. Probably -1 to 1. Yeah, right. So there is exactly one at c is equal to 0.25. There is exactly one equilibrium solution, and then for this there are multiple equilibrium solutions, which means there are two equilibrium solutions. So you can have a situation where depending upon the parameters in the system, you can have 1, 0 or many equilibrium solutions, right? And then here C is acting as the parameter which will change the fate of the system. You have two equilibrium solutions, you have one equilibrium solution, you may not have equilibrium solution at all, right? So let us go back and try to draw a situation where you have a curve a situation which looks like this. Exactly one. You have a situation which looks like this. No, and you have a situation which looks like this, where you have two equilibrium solutions. Okay, so you have a bifurcation. In your system, and such type of bifurcation is called tangent or saddle node bifurcation. So whenever you come across such a situation where you have a possibility of change in the number of equilibrium solutions or fixed points as a function of one of the bifurcation parameters, you call such a bifurcation a tangent or saddle node bifurcation. Okay. So now in our case for logistic growth, you have a situation like this. You can have, depending upon the value of lambda, 1 or 2 equilibrium or fixed points. Right now, our continuous logistic model told us two things, that there would be two equilibrium solutions. But now I must draw one additional thing here, which I always do. I draw this, I draw this, right? And now what I specifically do is I draw a point here and I draw that this is a sink solution and this is a unstable source solution, and exactly opposite, this is the source solution and this is the sink solution, right? So now the characteristics of this particular system, that you will have two solutions, two equilibrium solutions, was captured by the discrete model as well. You see here, there are two fixed points, right? So I am assured that my solution is in fact, or my model is in fact capturing the correct dynamics. But here, the second characteristic of the system is that one of the solutions, one of the fixed points or one of the equilibrium solutions was unstable and the other was stable for a greater than 0 and exactly the opposite for the other one. So now can I capture the same characteristic for this case as well? Can I capture the same characteristic for this case as well? In other words, do I have the concept of stable and unstable fixed points in discrete domain? The answer is yes. And how will you determine whether a particular fixed point is stable or unstable? Let us draw this here, what we drew previously. So we have a coordinate system here. We have a coordinate system here and I will draw 2 points. I will draw 2 coordinates and this is y is equal to x line. This is y is equal to x line, right? So first function looked like this. First function looked like this. Okay. So what I do is I start with a point, a random point here. So what was my algorithm? I start with the function. I go towards y is equal to x line horizontally, then vertically, then horizontally, then vertically, then horizontally and vertically and so on, right? So I come here. This means that this is a source sink solution. Sink. And in discrete domain, this is called attracting. Attracting. Okay. Now I do one thing. Let us go here. Let's start from here. Okay. And let's try to extend it. Okay. I start from here. And when I start from here, I go to this line. I go to this line. Again, I start from the function, go to y is equal to x line, and then I go up. And I'm never returning back to this point. I never return back to this point, right? Sorry, not this point. Not this point. This point. Okay, so that means this is a source or repelling fixed point, right? Now let me draw it in the other direction. Again, I have two fixed points. I start from here. Same algorithm, horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical, and I reach here. Okay, so this becomes sink or attracting, right? You can start from here as well. It does not matter. You go horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical, you will end up here, right? And then you will see that this is exactly opposite. If you are here, you go here, you go here, and you will end up finally here. So this means this is a source or repelling fixed point, right? So this means that we do have a concept of source or sink in discrete domain as well. Yes. Any question? No. So we do have the concept of source or sink or attracting and repelling fixed points or equilibrium solutions in this particular case as well. And then you can do the same analysis here. You can do the same analysis here. So how does our whole curve look like? Our curve looks like this. So let me try to draw this curve. So my curve will look like this. My curve will look like this, and there was y is equal to x curve. And if I remember correctly, the solution looked something like this. Yes. So it looked like this. Right. So what I will do, I'll start from any random point. Go here, go here, go here, go here, and there you go. Right. So your this point is sink and this point is source. Let us go back to our original continuous domain and let's see how does it look like. Yes, the upper one was stable, means sink, and the lower one was unstable, means source. And if you change the sign of A, you will get the exact opposite answer, right? So now you see our discrete domain modeling, gave us a completely different picture of what we look into the or how we look into the solutions. Okay, but you see here now I'll make one small change. So A was my parameter and I do this. Right? Now as I have changed the parameter, what has happened? My solution has started looking like this. My solution has started looking like this. Right? So now I start from a random point here. And what has happened here? Vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal. So now this will become sink. Okay, and there is only one solution, which is the sink solution. And this is what you see as you change the value of the parameter. So your behavior depends upon the value of parameter. Okay. But then there is one thing which is even more interesting, which you do not at all see in continuous domain. Let me increase the value of A to this value, which is around this, right? So let me see. Let us draw this. Okay, so if I draw it again, now my solution looks like this. I have y equals x line, and now my solution looks like this. It goes up and comes down. Right? Now let me try to do. If this is drawn very elegantly, then you will see the exact characteristic traits. In this particular case, you might not see here. So my same algorithm, I start with here. Okay, so I go here, I come down here, I go here, right? So you are reaching here, okay, and then again what you will see is I have to go here, I have to go here, and then you come here, I go here. So you are not reaching here in a continuous manner which you saw here in the top case, right? You continuously move towards the solution. right? But when your situation is like this, you sometimes are closer to the solution, sometimes you are far away from the solution. Okay, and when you have closer and far away, there can be a very elegant balance where you keep on repeating, when you keep on repeating your solutions, and you actually do not reach this particular point continuously. Okay, and when does that happen? That happens, you see here, up to this point, you see here, up to this point, this is all okay. But when you increase the parameter further, this point comes such that now you are no more in continuously reducing the distance domain, but you keep on coming closer, going farther, coming closer, going farther, and so on. And this happens because of the value of the parameter. Okay. And this has a very interesting implication we will see in a little while. But before that, we have to first understand how to determine whether any question. Okay, so we need to determine how to identify whether a fixed point is attracting or repelling. Okay, how to identify whether a solution is equilibrium solution is source or sink? Well, we did here. But how to determine whether the fixed point is attracting or repelling? First, how to identify the fixed point? You determine f of x equals x. So this solution will give you, solution gives the fixed point, right? Then you see what happens. What is the difference in these two cases? You see here, this was source in one case and sink in the other case. And what was the difference? The difference is that the derivative here was greater than the derivative of y is equal to x line, and the derivative of y is equal to x is simply 1, right? So the derivative here is 1 and the derivative here in this case is less than 1, right? So this is the governing factor. So for attracting fixed point, f dash of x, the magnitude, okay, at the fixed point should be less than 1. And for repelling, the derivative at the fixed point should be greater than 1. And the dangerous case is when it is equal to 1, you cannot actually make any comment whether it is attracting or repelling. Okay, so how do you identify whether a solution is an attracting solution or a repelling solution? Well, you simply take the derivative of your function and calculate the derivative at the fixed point. If the derivative is less than 1, you have that point as attracting point, and if the derivative is greater than 1, you have the repelling point. So now in your case, you have f of x equals lambda x 1 minus x. So first solve for lambda x 1 minus x equals x to get the fixed points. Okay, and then solve for d by dx of lambda x 1 minus x, and you determine this at fixed points for the two cases, and you will find, if you have solved it correctly, you will find that for your case this one will be a source solution and this one will be a sink solution for lambda, for a, the corresponding a greater than 0. Okay, fine. The final point is this. Let's try to understand how this behaves. Okay, we saw that we have the value of a, which is for certain value lesser than this, you have only one solution. Asymptotically, you go to that solution, then you have another solution, and then you say that you have some repeating solutions, repeating you can see cycles in your system, right? Let's see if this really happens by actually plotting the solution, right? So let's see if this happens. So my parameter is lambda, and I will set the lambda to say 0.5. So I have xn and xn plus 1, right? As I said, I'm coding it trivially on Excel, so I will not use 0. I will use 0.1. So my formula was lambda times xn times 1 minus xn. Fine. Where did we make a mistake? Okay, it has to be C2. C2, and we need to fix this value. Okay, fine. And then what will happen in the next step? I don't have time here. Xn plus 1 will become xn. So this is simply equal to this. And let me see if I get it. It should populate it correctly. Yes, fine. So this is my evolution of the system following the discrete logistic model. Let me plot it. Yes, you see here, what I see here is that for lambda is equal to 0.5, I go down to 0. See, sink solution. And now I'll keep on changing the parameters. 0.8, I'm asymptotically going to 0, then 1.1. Since again you are still going to 0, 1.5. Now you see the pattern has changed. Now you are settling to the upper fixed point. I will keep on doing this. The rise will become sharp. And then you will see at 3, this is exactly what I was referring to. You see here, when you have the parameter greater than 3, what I had drawn here, you see, it keeps on oscillating. And this is what you see here. The evolution of the system keeps on oscillating. Okay, let me make it a little more. So 3.5. It splits further. The cycles become larger. And the most interesting thing happens at this region. Now, are these cycles is the question. The answer to this question is that when lambda is equal to is in a range of 3 for this particular logistic model, the range of 3.8 to 4, you see a complete random distribution of the of the numbers. Okay, so there is no pattern in this at all. Okay, in this entire evolution, you do not see any pattern. Let me repeat. 0.9, there is a pattern. Reducing 1.5, there is a pattern. Increasing 3, there is a pattern. Oscillating, but I make it 3.9 or 3.98. It becomes completely random, right? And what is even more interesting is that not only this is random. Let me change this. So for this case, for the case of 0.8. Whoever has the mic on, please switch it off. Okay. Now let me change 0.1 to 0.11. Do you see any change? No substantial change. 0.09. No substantial change. Similarly, I'll make it to 1.8, 0.9, 0.09, 0.1, no change, 1.11, no change, no substantial change happens, right? But the moment I have here random distribution, you see 1.11 is 0.11 is giving me this, 0.1 will give a completely different one, 0.09 will give me a completely different future behavior, which means that if I change my initial seed to a by a very small amount, your future changes by completely different value. Okay, it changes to a completely different values. You see here, the value here is around 1, and then I change it to 0.1, and the value became 0.21, and then 0.11, the value became 0.26 around, or 0.3. So you have a complete unpredictable behavior for the future, even by changing the initial condition. So this one 0.11 is the initial condition, right? X0. So even for changes in very small, even for very small changes in the initial condition, your future becomes completely different. And what kind of behavior is this? This behavior is called chaos. Okay, so this logistic model, of xn plus 1 equals lambda xn 1 minus xn is a chaotic equation. Okay, which means that the system future depends not only on the initial condition, it changes drastically on the initial conditions. And Lorentz modeled weather forecast, and he said that, you know, weather forecasting models are actually chaotic. So even if your conditions of wind velocity, temperature of the system, even if they change by a very small value, your future or your weather is going to change in a very drastic manner. And that happens because your equations concerning weather forecast, this is not the equation for weather forecast, by the way, but those equations concerning weather forecast are chaotic in nature. And one of the very beautiful applications of this particular chaotic equation is, in fact, was in random number generation. Okay, so in computer, when you need to generate random numbers and you need to generate it for very large number of times in Monte Carlo simulations, just as an example, you will need to generate random numbers for a very long time, and this equation, because it is chaotic, will keep on giving different values which are completely distributed between 0 and 1 all the time. Okay, so this is the characteristic trends which you see in discrete domain, which you normally do not see in continuous domain. Okay, so if you have any doubts or any questions, please feel free to ask. We will take a 7 minutes break. It is 13 minutes past 12. We'll start at 12:20. If you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Sir, hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, so chaos is a characteristic of nonlinear systems in general.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
Sir?
let me
Hello?
clarify.
Hello?
Let me clarify. Yes, I will come show him. So chaos will always happen. No. So let me phrase it correctly to what Abha asked. Okay. Chaotic equations are inherently nonlinear, but that doesn't mean that all nonlinear equations are chaotic. Okay. Does that
Okay.
make it
Yes, sir.
clear?
Yes, sir.
Just because an equation is nonlinear does not mean that it would be chaotic. But if it's chaotic, it would definitely be nonlinear. Yes, Shaurim.
Yes, sir. So for the case of tangent bifurcation, when
Hmm.
there is only one route,
Hmm.
if we start from an initial point and then go to the y equals to x line and then come back, so for that case we get two values on the graph. So you take the closer one, which is the closer one at y is equal to x, but if we take the other one, then
Hmm.
it will diverge, right?
Yes, that is true. That is true. That depends upon the nature of the function.
So like for one initial point, it can leads to the sinc solution also, can be unstable at the same time.
No, I don't think that will happen. You will return to that same. Okay. Okay, very good. That's what I said. See, what you are referring to is a special case of this one here. Attracting for a fixed point and repelling fixed point. Okay. What happens when the derivative becomes 1? You don't know, right?
No, sir.
Okay. So when derivative becomes 1, in general what happens is that from one direction you are attracting and from the other direction you are repelling. Okay. So in case of tangent bifurcation, that is very likely to happen, that the direction from which you start becomes important. Okay.
Sir, can we explain from the graph once?
Okay. So okay, let me do it. Okay. So now suppose you have a graph which looks like this. Okay. This one. And then you will make a y is equal to x line. Okay, it's terrible. But it won't make that line. Yes, this is what I was suspecting. Okay, let's do one thing. Okay, and then if the graph looks like this, right? So there can be a situation where very close to this you have the derivative which becomes unity, right? So then when you start here, you are actually going towards it, okay, and from here you are going away from it. Okay, so the overall direction is this. So now it depends how you're starting, and then if the nature of the plot is the other way around, which is like this, for example, then again the same point will be neither attracting nor repelling, or both attracting as well as repelling, but depending upon where you are in your quadrant, your future will evolve like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got it.
That
Thank
is
you.
what you are asking is it is basically happening because the derivative is becoming 1, and when the derivative becomes 1, it is really difficult to guess the behavior.
So for physical system, it is much more like unrealistic if a point is simultaneously.
Yes. That will not happen. Such models will such situations may not occur. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Sir, I had a question. So
Yes.
when you were changing the value of lambda, so we were in some cases we were getting smooth solution, in some cases random solution. So
Huh.
is there a transition value of lambda? Like
Okay,
for
okay,
which-
okay. I forgot that.
And why is it exactly happening? Yeah, like is it because that maxima is coming as you were showing in the graph?
Yes, exactly. The reason is that because there is a maxima. When you say that you have this, um, so let me draw here. So in one case you get a solution like this, then in another case you get solutions like this, and then you get solutions like this, and then you become completely random, right? This going from this to this, right? You have a bifurcation in your system. This is called exchange bifurcation. Exchange bifurcation. Okay, when you go from here to here, as you change the value, that happens close to 1, as I told. When you go from here,
Sorry,
yes,
sir. What are the two plots representing? Like
these are different values of lambda. Lambda is
okay.
equal to 0.5, lambda is equal to 1.5, lambda is equal to 3. Okay,
Okay.
so when you move from lambda is equal to 0.5 to lambda is equal to 1.5, you are basically exchanging the lower fixed point as the sink to the upper fixed point as the sink. Okay, so that's why it's called exchange bifurcation. When you are close to lambda is equal to 3, lambda close to 3, you call it period doubling bifurcation. These are a lot of terms which I do not want to very fixate on it. So when again this change happens, and you will see why does it happen. You already told that, see here the derivative becomes exactly this, and then it starts inverting. At that point of time, you get what is called period doubling bifurcation. Okay, and then it becomes a completely chaotic system, and that happens in a very small range. You see, if you plot the same thing with 4.1, for example, 4.1, okay, in fact it does, but for very large values, see, the solutions do not exist or they just blow up. Okay, so yeah, does that answer your question?
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah,
Sir. So
there are a lot
you.
of different types of bifurcations which are happening at these different parameters. Yes, go on.
Sir, so you were showing that two different trends for different values of lambda. So
Yeah.
lambda is equal to 0.5. You showed that it is a decreasing. The slope is decreasing, and
Yes.
lambda is equal to 3. It is increasing. So
No, lambda is equal to
like
1.5. It is increasing.
okay, it is increasing. So sir, what I want to ask is there a smooth transition between the two states? Like when the solutions are becoming like when the solution have a pattern and when the solutions are becoming random, or is it happening drastically at a given value?
No. So I can show you. It will be very clear from here. So see, you have 0.9, which is decreasing, and if I make it 1, you see the x-axis range has reduced, which means it is almost straight. Okay, and again 1.05, it is again the x-axis value has become even smaller. Again for 1.2, it is increasing, but if I make it 1.1, you will see, sorry, 1.15, the x-axis range is very small, right? So it is happening continuously. It is happening continuously. Similarly, for 2, you see an increase, but you see there will be a small hump. 2.5, see there is a hump there, right? And then it keeps on splitting. 3, it splits completely, and then again everything happens continuously.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Sir, in one of the previous classes,
yes,
sir, we had drawn the roots of the like fx. Like in this case, it is roots of fx equal to x versus the parameter. So Like here in this case, it is A or lambda. So
Yes.
if from there we can see that point which Vedant is talking about, the smooth transitions and all this.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that is true. So that's called the bifurcation plot. Okay. So the bifurcation plot will give us an idea about those critical points which are to be taken into account. Yes, good. Any other doubts or questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, so in the continuous domain,
Mhm.
we when we are converting it to the discrete domain, we are trying to see what whether or not all the characteristics have been captured. And
Yes.
we saw that the continuous domain was good enough. Say, for example, when we modeled the population growth, it was good enough to capture what we see in real life. Sir, is chaos
For very
also
large numbers. For very large numbers. Yes.
okay?
For
Sir,
large
for
numbers, it is good enough.
okay, sir. Sir, I wanted to know if like we have chaos because we have the equation written like that, like it is the model which we have done.
Yes.
So
Yes.
is it like true for real systems as well? Like we see chaos in real life?
Yes. Yes. That's exactly what I said, right? That the weather forecasting is the models associated with weather forecasting are chaotic. Okay, so when Lawrence for the first time published this paper where he told that these are the Lawrence was obviously a mathematician, right? So when he said that there are equations which are inherently chaotic and the future will depend incredibly on the initial condition. So then people said, okay, what you are basically saying is that uh, I'm trying to model my future, or I'm trying to predict the weather in Florida, and then there would be a butterfly who would be in Brazil, and the butterfly will start flapping its wings fast, very rapidly. So you are basically saying is that that phenomenon will change the wind pattern such that there is a possibility that flapping of wings by a butterfly in Brazil will bring a tornado in Florida. And Lawrence's answer was yes, it is possible. Theoretically, it is possible because the equations are chaotic. So when you say that, and this is what is famously called the butterfly effect. People initially, laughed at him, but then later on, after the development of chaos theory, we all know that it is actually true that the systems are so chaotic that the future depends usually on change in very small amount of, initial condition. So now what we see is that you do not, if you cannot control the initial condition extremely well, you may not be in a good position to predict the future. And this becomes even more important after the application of computers. So now the question is, why do we need to bother about modeling in discrete domain? We started bothering about modeling in discrete domain only after coming to the computer process control. Because what's going to happen is that depending upon the number of digits that you use for your truncation, you can have say 1.110 and 1.1101, right? And these two may make the difference quite a lot as you are doing this iteration say several million times. So you may get a completely different behavior. So chaotic behavior is definitely present, not only in definitely present in real world. This becomes even more important when you use computers for any application. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Does that answer your question satisfactorily?
Yes, sir. Actually, we had covered a part of this in the biochemical engineering course.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, sir.
Bifurcations.
Yes, sir. Chaos in non-linear systems. So I
Non-linear
just
systems.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It
True.
answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Good. So let's continue. We will now see.
Sir,
Yeah.
excuse me, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
so the cathodic equation explains the butterfly effect.
No, I didn't get you. Can you please repeat?
Sir, the cathodic equation is the explanation of the butterfly effect. It's theoretical,
Yes.
sir. butterfly effect is theoretical. So chaotic equation is explanation of the butterfly effect.
Yes, that is true. See, the whole point is the question is that see, previously we used to okay, so there is a joke. Let me share, because anyway we will not be able to cover the next topic. So there is a joke that there used to be a old man who used to make an perfect weather forecast. So he used to stay in a village, and people used to come to him that, okay, what's going to happen, tomorrow, and he used to give a perfect forecast, and then he would never tell how did he make the forecast. So then finally, when he was towards the end of his life, people asked him, so can you please tell what is that magical power that you have, that you are in a position to tell what exactly how the forecast is going to happen? So then he said, okay, fine, let me tell you. He said, it's very simple. I just turn on the radio, and All India Radio always gives some weather forecast. So then people say, okay, so that is what you tell us. He said, no, whatever All India Radio tells me, I tell the exactly opposite of it, and that is what happens. And I have been correct all the time. Now, jokes apart, this basically means that previously, whenever these weather forecasts used to happen, they always, in very likelihood, used to fail. And why did they used to fail? Well, they used to fail because of this butterfly effect. No, it's actually not the butterfly who started flapping its wings, but there can be small changes in temperature. There can be small changes in the weather condition, which may not be predicted very accurately, and therefore over a period of time which is like 24 hours, you may get a completely different behavior than what you would expect, right? So therefore butterfly effect is obviously symbolic. You say that uh, the equation is chaotic, so you can bring about huge changes, but what practically it means is that even if you make small changes in the initial condition, your future can be very, very drastic. Okay. Yeah. Any other question?
Sir,
Yes.
one more. So, sir, as you tell, the chaotic equation used for the generating random numbers.
Yes.
So sometimes when we do any transaction, bank transaction, something, we get some OTP. So that, so the banking system and some else using the chaotic equation to generating that OTP.
Yes. So okay. So as I said, it used to be this equation used to be used as a equation for random number generation. Now you have entire thesis written by people to develop even more efficient random numbers. And the problem with random numbers is that none of the random numbers which you generate by computer are actually random numbers. Those are pseudo random numbers. Okay, so what is the meaning of random number? Then the meaning of random number is that the next number which comes should not depend upon what I have now. It should not be predictable. But the moment you write an equation to generate a number, you mean that you already know what's going to happen next, right? So therefore, as a first attempt to generate random numbers, people thought that, okay, this is really a chaotic equation. So if I give a random seed, then it should generate a series of random numbers, which should satisfy some certain qualities of random numbers, that they should be perfectly randomly distributed and so on. Now, the problem is that how to get the seed. First problem, how to get the seed. And second, suppose if I'm doing a simulation, then whatever research you do, it should be reproducible. So now inherently, if you say that I'm using a random number, then that means it is never reproducible. Because if it is a perfectly random number, you cannot get that series again. So you have to satisfy these two conditions simultaneously. So what was the answer to that? The answer to that is that if you give the same seed, it will give you the same set of future readings. Okay, so how do you get the same seed? If you are doing your coding for, say, Monte Carlo simulation, you give the seed, right? So that somebody else can reproduce your simulation. But in banking, for example, if you want to do this, then how is the seed provided? Because if somebody is giving you the seed, everybody would know that, okay, what is the next OTP? I mean, anybody who can hack will know that what is the next OTP which is going to come, which is not a good situation. So then what do you do? What you basically do is you use the computer's clock time as the seed. So every time computer's clock time will be different. So you will get a completely different number which will be generated. In fact, the same technology is there for keyless entries for car. If you want to open the car using your electronic key, or if you want to close the car using your electronic key, again it generates a random number. The sequence is known to the receptor in the car. The sequence is known to the transmitter in the car. The sequence is not known to anybody else, right? So the question is, if I can set up a receiver, and since my transmitter in my key is sending some signal, the receiver will intercept those signal, and then I should be in a position in principle to generate the pattern for unlocking the car. That does not happen because the transmitter and receiver are synchronized using same random number generator. So at both the ends, the random numbers are updated at this in a synchronized manner. So you can lock the car as well as you can unlock the car using random numbers in the same manner. And again, those random numbers come from chaotic equations. Any other? Okay, does this answer the question? And if there are any other questions?
Yes, sir. No, sir, there are no other question.
Okay, fine. Anybody else?
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, if we use the same lambda like 3 or 3.5 in case of continuous model, like in case of e power 80 form. So as the time varies, we get a good value like at x of t. That is not random, no sir. So which should we use, like continuous or discrete? And I also think that if we use backward difference formula for discretization, then we get another lambda.
Yes, very good. So there are two questions. Let me answer the second question first. Whether you use backward differentiation or forward differentiation, you are going to end up with a series. See, all you are interested in is a series. Okay, so even in your backward difference, what's going to happen is you will get xn. So let me write here quickly. You will get xn as a function of xn minus 1, right? This is backward difference. Xn plus 1 is a function of xn is forward difference. Well, it does not matter, because let me say that yn plus 1 is equal to xn. So what is going to happen? Y of n plus 1 is equal to f of yn, and let me replace xn, yn by xn. It's only a mathematical symbol, so I can write xn plus 1 equals f of xn, right? So in principle, whether you use forward difference or backward difference, the evolution will not change. The evolution will not change. But what will change? What will change is the expression for lambda. So let us go back here where we wrote this one. See here. When I write this, I wrote this lambda and I wrote this mu. The expression for lambda and expression for mu will change. Okay, and the difference which these two cases are making are basically coming because even in the linear model, you have x n plus 1 equals a delta t plus 1 xn, right? And when is this same as the continuous model? This will be same as the continuous model when delta t tends to 0. When delta t tends to 0, you will get different. You will get the two models to be the same. So to answer your second question, qualitatively, obviously there would be differences in the models. Qualitatively, you will get the same behavior whether you use forward difference or backward difference, and the approximation depends upon delta t. So if you use different delta t, if you use large delta t, you may not be in a position to get the correct behavior at all. Okay. To answer the first question, and what was the first question? I forgot.
Sir, if we use lambda 3.5 or 3 in case of
Okay,
continuous
so
model.
what happens in a continuous system if you use this specific value of lambda? The continuous system will not show this chaotic behavior, but you have to also ask this question that will you have a physical system for which the parameters would correspond to such high numbers of lambda. Okay, in a realistic system where you are defining the population of the system, your lambda, the parameter space lambda, may not have that acceptable value at all. Okay, because everything depends upon your parameters.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Okay. Good. Any more questions? No. If you don't ask questions, then I will keep on teaching further. So better ask questions.
Sir, just one last.
Yes.
So I was just not clear about this one thing. So you said that is this chaos only a characteristic of the discrete model, or if not, then how do we imagine chaos situation in an analogous continuous model?
Yes. See, the drastic is a very good question. The drastic difference between the behavior of these two systems is basically coming because of the discrete nature of the systems. Okay, so there is fixed point iteration theory. Okay, in mathematics. In fact, what we also call contraction mapping. So what is going on is that in every time you do this iteration, somewhere we did this. Every time you do this iteration in your metric space, which we took up in the last semester, in your metric space, you are defining a distance function d. Okay, and this distance function should keep on reducing. Should keep on reducing. Now, what happens is that in this metric space where you are trying to reduce this distance function, this behavior is a very strong function of the parameters, especially specifically in case of discrete systems. In continuous systems, it does not happen. Okay, in continuous system this does not happen, and therefore why are we seeing such a strong dependence of parameters in discrete domain, not in continuous domain? This is because this is specifically true for the discrete domain, and it is not so much true. I will not say that this will never be true, but this is not so much true for continuous domain. So these are the observations which are coming specifically because of discrete domain. Okay, does that answer your question? And I think you asked something more. Can you please repeat?
No, sir. That was it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes. And now, yes, you didn't ask that question. I wanted to answer that question. So why does this happen? Why does chaos happen specifically for discrete domains? Well, this is very simple to imagine in a physical system. So you see here, you imagine a compartment. We took this example in our previous elective course on thermodynamics. So those who have taken the course, they will understand easily. So suppose you have gas molecules of type X on one side and gas molecules of type O on the other side. Okay, and there is a partition, and then I remove this partition from here. Okay, so what's going to happen is I am going to remove this partition. What's going to happen? X type molecules will go here, Y type molecules, zero type molecules will come here. But Newton's laws are reversible. Newton's laws are time reversible. So that means what's going to happen, it is possible that after some time I get this configuration back that all these are on this side and all these are on this side. This is possible, right? But then physically we see that this is never happen. This will never happen. If you mix two gases, they will never separate, right? If and in fact if they separate, then you should not get degree as chemical engineer. There is no requirement of a chemical engineer. So this separation never happens because this is highly, not because this is impossible. This is because it's not probable, right? And why does it not happen? Why it is not probable? Again, this is not probable because the mass is made up of discrete particles. Again, your matter is not continuous, your matter is discrete. And the moment you have a discrete matter, the equations of this sort are chaotic. Okay, so chaos is very prominent whenever you have a discrete system. Discrete can be a discrete variable in mathematics or discrete particles in physics, whichever you take. Okay, any more questions?
Sir,
Sir, I
sir,
have-
also in
Huh.
sir, like in continuous systems, we do not have the like concept like we have in the discrete system of where the next value is dependent on the previous value.
No, that is not true. That's not true. So in the equation dx by dt equals ax, the next value does depend upon the previous value, but okay, in a certain sense, you're correct that the differentiation between next and present is a continuity. So, but the concept is there. I don't think I would be in a comfortable position to say that it does not exist. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
when we do discretization, so there's always a error regarding related to discretization. So
Huh.
how it if you are saying that in discrete systems it is better to model them with discretization. But there is an error involved in this also. So like how it represents more
Yes. Well,
much better.
this is a who asked this question? Okay, Sarfaraz. So this is a very interesting question. And it's also a philosophical question, because let me answer this. So those who are like hardcore experimentalists, who do not believe in I only believe what I see, these kind of people, they say that okay, computations don't work, theory doesn't work, nothing works only as long as if you don't mix two liquids, rest everything is fantasy, in certain words. Is it true? Okay, in other words, if nothing works, then the first thing which you should not be taught is the first course on chemical engineering, which is chemical process calculations, right? I would have strong objection in anybody teaching chemical process calculations if he believes that calculations don't work, because you are not doing an experiment with combustion or any kind of problem which you are taking in the course. But then how are you telling the students that this is how the product distribution you will get? That means the mathematics works. That means computations work. That means modeling works. That means simulations work. Now, what is the reason that many times they fail? Again, as I said, there are two reasons that they fail. Okay, first reason is obviously you're not a good modeler, so you are writing the equation incorrectly. For very simple systems like what you studied in process control, process calculations in third semester of your undergrad, the systems are very simple. So it's easy to write mass balance, it's very easy, trivial to write energy balance, everything is very simple. When you have a completely new situation in research, you really many times do not have a clue of how the things are working. So there is a likelihood that you are not modeling your system correctly, right? That's where it may fail. Secondly, it may fail because of conversion of that model to a computer, right? And that's what your question, that's where your question comes, right? That everything which we model is in continuous domain, and everything which we solve on a computer is in discrete domain. So again, it comes to the fundamental question that why should we bother about the discrete domain? Because today, for all practical purposes, the continuous domain doesn't exist. Everywhere you use computers, so everything is discrete domain. So now the problem is that you need to convert a continuous domain model or a continuous domain problem to a discrete domain problem. Now you do it because either the system is inherently discrete domain system like population dynamics, or because you have to do it because you are using a computer. Now, just because you cannot do it correctly does not mean that the method is not good, right? You have to become good in that conversion and do it correctly. So there are problems while dealing with discrete domains, but those problems have to be overcome. And that's why you have such a big course on computational fluid dynamics. That's why you have courses on molecular simulations. That's why you have courses on finite element methods, where you will be told why you should do a particular thing, why you should not do a particular thing. And then the problem of conversion to a discrete domain again becomes theoretical, because every discretization works only as the discrete element tends to 0. Practically it's not possible. So now you should know the optimum. Okay, because if an experimentalist is giving me a value, it's not the statement which is absolutely correct, or it's absolute truth, because there will be an error bar. There will be an error bar because he is not doing it well. There is an error bar because the instrument is not perfect. There will always be an error bar. So when you are converting your continuous model to your discrete model, your error bar will be there because of discretization, and your error bar should not be greater than the error bar which your experimentalist is given to you. This is all you need to worry about. If you are fine, there is no problem converting any domain to any other domain, as long as your mathematics is giving the answer which is precise, more precise or more accurate than what you can expect out of experiments. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
Any other question?
Sir, I was just
Sir,
wondering about the case where we have a dynamical equilibrium point. For example, you said when we, for example, take an object, plunge it in some fluid where the fluid temperature itself changes. For
Yes.
example, T infinity is a function of temperature or whatever sort. And in that case, does this system, even in spite of being a continuous model, continuous equations, all of those things, but it is then can we say because of the dynamical equilibrium point, it's inherently chaotic in some sort?
No. So in that particular case, you would not get the equilibrium at all. So in the first lecture, we said that there is a forcing function, and that forcing function is not a continuous. That forcing function doesn't have any equilibrium. So if your forcing function itself doesn't have an equilibrium, your dynamics will also not show any equilibrium. Okay, but the interaction between your system and subsystem, or your system and surrounding, will it inherently lead to chaos? The answer to that is no. It's not. There is no such a rule like that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And you also asked one more question. I said I will answer this later. What was the question?
Sir, I was at that time it was about I think Van der Waals model, Van der Waals equation of state that was going on. So then I think I just asked that whether in that situation, I forgot the question itself. Will
Okay.
yeah, I'll just take some time. Yeah.
You can get back to me whenever you get it. Yes. There was
Sir,
one
is
more.
there any way of commenting the stability like the attracting or repelling the point if the derivative is 1, the modulus?
No, that's the problem. No, the answer is no.
We have to draw it and check.
Yeah. Yes. That's a sad situation. There is no way.
So because if said this proof I think can be done by a Taylor expansion about the point of equilibrium.
Yes, the problem is the same problem, that if your first derivative is 0 and second derivative is also 0, how would you comment upon the minima or maxima? Right, it's the same problem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Any more questions? Okay, fine. We were going to take a lot of other things on bifurcation, but it's okay. We will take it in the next lecture, and we will also study very interesting case of reactor dynamics in the next lecture. Thank you.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, in the class test that problem you have given, sir, will you discuss that sometimes?
Okay, it depends upon the time that we have. I mean, okay, so what was, okay, I have the question in front of me. What you want? The dynamical variables were x1, x2, x3, y1, y2, y3. The order was 6, right? This
yes,
must
sir.
be easy. Then equilibrium solution, Ax is equal to 0. You plug it in Wolfram alpha, you should get everything 0. This is also okay?
Yes, sir.
Then you plug in the equation, determine the eigenvalues and eigenvectors that you should get.
Yes, sir. So there is a repeating eigen vector is there.
I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you like? It is a overall 60 phase space, and how we.
No. I don't expect you. You were asked to determine this. You were not asked to write to draw the phase portrait. You were asked to draw the qualitative evolution of the system. So what you see in that, basically, you must have seen that some of the eigenvalues are imaginary, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And then some of the eigenvalues were real numbers. So the contribution of sorry.
Sir, one of them is 0 and other 4 are imaginary.
Right. So then what I basically wanted you to know is that during the initial time, doesn't matter, it can have any dynamics. I mean, I don't expect you to really try to identify the dynamics, but the imaginary portion of the dynamics, you need to see whether it's a complex number or a purely imaginary number. If it is a complex number, I do not know I do not remember what are the eigenvalues, but if they were purely imaginary numbers, then you should see that the long-term behavior would be an oscillating behavior with same period of oscillation, same amplitude. If your complex, if the eigenvalues were complex, less than 0 positive part, then you should say that there were oscillations which decaying in magnitude, and the other way around. Yes, this just rough.
And sir, due to the repeated eigenvalue part, that we will have one linear part also in the solution. And
yes,
can we have a concept of like equilibrium line instead of equilibrium point?
Yes, it is true. In fact, we did not take the case of repeated eigenvalues, because what happens in case of repeated eigenvalues, you do not have a sufficient number of eigenvectors. So what you will need to do is you will need to determine the generalized eigenvectors. Okay, so in case you have not done this in any of the maths courses, please find out. It's okay for this particular exam. I don't expect you to do that. In general, you should know that you should have the number of eigenvectors which is equal to the order of the system. And if there are less, for example, if you get only 3 eigenvectors, so you need to determine 3 more generalized eigenvectors, and accordingly you specify your system. Okay, so I expect you to go back and find out how to write the generalized eigenvectors if you do not have sufficient number of eigenvectors. For the examination, don't worry.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other doubt or question? Okay, fine. Thank you. We meet again next week.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.